I am not carnivore anymore, but here's why you might want to do it. But first of all, I am going to just rewind and share a little bit of a backstory before I dive into carnivore eating and the carnivore diet, because there's obviously such a hype around the carnivore diet. And I'm not going to speak on like doing carnivore diet long-term for autoimmune disease or different diseases as such, but I am going to speak on it for your average gal or male who wants to improve gut healing, hormonal balance, maybe clearer skin, maybe losing weight or getting more toned, or healing any disordered eating and really feeling satiated, reducing any sugar cravings. I'm going to target carnivorism for that. But first, I'm going to start with my story. So I'm 26 right now, but back when I was like 19 years old, turning 20 years old, I was super into sustainability. But at that time, my belief was the only way to save the planet was to go vegan. And so I dove deep into it. And I was really getting to bodybuilding and the fitness industry at that time. So I was like super stoked and I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this. I could be like a vegan bodybuilder. And I was so stoked on getting so deep into my fitness, but doing it as a vegan. 2020 pandemic hit and I was living with my dad at the time and he eats a lot of meat. So I was like, okay, let me just experiment. Like, I'm not going out with my friends, like nothing's out in the public. I'm just gonna experiment to see what chicken, some eggs, some salmon would feel like. Still didn't touch red meat at all. And it felt so satiating. And I've heard a few women tell me this. They literally started dreaming about eggs. And so like I was salivating especially for salmon, but also eggs and like cheese. And I just wanted like all this animal fat, basically. Like I wanted all the animal-based fat. And then I was like starting to feel good and I was like, wow, like so many of my cravings are gone. I feel so much more satiated and it's so much easier to hit my protein. At that time, I was still tracking protein and macros. Then I listened to a podcast with Dr. Paul Saladino and I was like, wait, what do you mean you only eat meat? And at first I found a lot of resistance, but like I've just always been experimental. I just dove in. And so that brought me to like super animal-based eating. Then I bought Paul Saladino's book, Carnivore Code, and I was like, I think I'm going to do this for a few months. Like there's just so much there that I want to uncover of like what benefits can I tap into with doing like a strict carnivore diet for a few months. And I definitely could not be the most strict. Like I still had a few dates and some honey here and there, but definitely like super keto. And that was life-changing. Energy-wise, I really struggled. Like I will say, and this is the part that's crazy because there's so many carnivore YouTubers out there and social media people, and like some people are freaking thriving, but like especially as a woman, I just find it really hard to be like, wow, you could just straight up thrive on like the strictest carnivore lion diet ever. That's crazy for me because I was also training hard, and at that time I was living in Florida, in Miami, where it was so humid, like hot, like I was going crazy and I was like running my business and I needed that extra like carby fuel. So that took a big hit. And I know people say you get like the keto flu and like you get really low energy because your body's adjusting. And like, yeah, I definitely felt that. But I was like, how long is this going to go on? Like, I just don't know if this is the most true for me. But I never got sick of a steak or meat. Like I still look forward to every single meat-rich meal. Like it just is so satiating for me. So my goal was never to like be carnivore or fully strictly animal-based forever. But all of the science was just so evident for me, like regardless of the studies, because like honestly, everything is biased. I can't even trust most studies, but like based on my body's response to eating meat, to including very high fats, like a lot of butter, a lot of ghee, eggs, fatty steaks, my body was saying yes. It was saying fuck yes. And it's still saying yes. Like more than 2 years later, after trying the carnivore diet, my body's still saying yes to a lot of meat. That wasn't the case when I was doing more plant-based. But I did want to still reincorporate other foods in. Like it was meant to be an experiment. Being super strict carnivore can be like really stressful unless you're like fully isolating yourself. And I still love different types of foods. And I do follow different practices like Ayurvedic studies, which is ancient Indian holistic science, or Chinese medicine. And they heavily rely and trust into plant allies and herbs and different spices as healing modalities. And so while I'm not just like obsessed with like every single herb every single day, I still feel like I can microdose really everything and see how it feels for me. I mean, coffee is an example. There's all these hardcore carnivore people, but then they're like having coffee still. And I'm like, coffee is literally like one of the most like disruptive, toxic stuff in comparison to like all the other things you could be including in your diet. So it's interesting. Like as humans, we want to pick and choose like what we want the most and we try to justify it. But like, I'm just sharing the truth of my experience. No hate on you if you have coffee. So I started to include plants back into my diet, and that was really cool. And this is why, like, I'm going to start getting into the benefits of carnivore. This is why carnivore can be like an amazing elimination diet. Like if you're used to eating just like a variety of foods, we call it food combining, where like on your plate you just have so many different types of foods and you're eating them all throughout the day, and you're not actually being intentional with like what kind of food groups are you eating at the times of day. Elimination diet can be amazing. So essentially you're taking out literally everything, because like I really do believe, and the science shows it too, like meat is the only food group that humans could solely thrive off of. There are some arguments about like fruitarians and like how the chimps, which are our closest ancestors, primates, they are pretty much like mostly thriving on fruits, but they also just thrive on if they get a hunt. And they eat things like antelope or even other primate groups. Point being, meat is really the only food that we can like really fully not just like survive on, but we could thrive off of it too, because it's giving us so many nutrients, so much protein, and so much fat as well. And we need those. There's really no other food group out there that's going to give us everything we need. So because we can pretty much survive off of meat is going to be the ultimate elimination diet. So when you're on this ultimate elimination diet for at least 3 months, it's giving yourself a time to really clear everything else out and really feel yourself at a baseline. And this is like probably the biggest benefit of carnivore to me, going on that diet, is like you are experiencing your full on baseline. Like this is what I am at the most minimal level of eating. And now anything I put on top of that is going to be like an extra thing, and I can see how it interacts with my body. So like one thing right off the bat that my body was like, this is a no, was potatoes, especially like regular potatoes, sweet potatoes, Japanese potatoes fucked me up. And then also like legumes, especially like lentils and mung beans, which I used to love when I was plant-based, but like, oh my goodness, like I was like, this is why I was so bloated and that I'd be in the bathroom all the time. Because when I was carnivore, I feel like the digestion was pretty easeful. I didn't even fart. Like it's crazy. So you're not putting any fiber or these different things in your body. So you can see really how sensitive you are to broccoli, how sensitive you are to asparagus and beans and rice. And so white rice or just any kind of rice, I'm also pretty sensitive to. I have reintegrated rice a little bit to how I'm eating now, but it's definitely not something I go out of my way to do. Oddly enough, I do better with like sourdough bread in comparison to rice. So I actually prefer bread more. However, that is still a little bit more of a processed food, unfortunately. Okay, so you're creating this baseline. You're really experimenting and seeing what foods, what herbs, like all these things, how they interact with your body. And then also, oh my gosh, when I started allowing myself to have other desserts and fruits and just all the things again, I noticed that my sensitivity was so much higher. Like we almost desensitize ourselves. We're changing our chemistry when we eat a certain way. And so I was able to like really overdose on desserts, and I really allowed myself to create that baseline again. So when I did reintroduce different desserts or more higher carby foods or even some processed foods, I was able to really allow myself to be in a more truthful sensitivity and only take what I needed. Like I would take a taste of something and I was like, I'm good. Like I experienced it. Whereas myself before, I would need to have the whole thing and maybe even binge more. That brings me to any type of disordered eating. For me personally, it was binge eating, and I felt like I had this like never ending hunger. Like I was never satiated, and just being able to like be full abundance mode and go all in on meat, it allowed me to like fully feel satiated. And so I felt like I did some really deep healing on myself, like not just on a physical gut level, but on like a mental and emotional and like animal brain level. Like I feel like I signaled so much safety to myself when I was eating this way. And I can seriously say that, like, being someone who struggled with disordered eating and binge eating and starving myself for so long, I did so much healing by just investing in really high quality meats and eating those meats for several months and really just focusing in on that. So I'm not even gonna lie, one of the reasons I went into the carnivore diet was not only because of the research, but it's because I just saw so many YouTubers and social media people talking about them losing weight on the carnivore diet. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just eat like this and then I can like get rid of any of the excess fat on myself. And to be honest, like I didn't even have a lot of fat. I was just like obsessed with like being super shredded, and I thought this was finally the answer. Little did I know I had a lot more inner work to do on myself. But anyways, I'm happy it brought me to the carnivore journey because it really humbled me. And so I dove into this diet and I felt like I honestly like gained a little bit of weight. Like I didn't really feel like I lost weight for sure. I felt like I gained weight, and I was being patient because I heard this again, like just be patient, like your body's adjusting. But for me, experiencing the low energy when I was super carnivore and then also a little bit of the weight gain, it was just feeling like very difficult for me. And so when I finally, like I started introducing other foods, and I had to go through a period also where I was like, okay, these are the foods that feel good for my body. These are the foods that don't feel good for my body. That also takes a lot of honesty. And I'm honestly 2 years later after the carnivore diet, I'm still experimenting. Like I still only put dairy back into my diet this past year, and I'm still within the dairy seeing what feels good for me. I know that dairy for a lot of people is still considered carnivore diet because it's like a animal byproduct, but that was something I'd cut out for like a long time, even since I was vegan. So it's been out of my diet for a long time. But like sourdough bread, all these things that I had to experiment with, like it took me a while to really humble myself and see what was super working for me. And then when I finally found animal-based diet that felt good for me, which is basically like meat, but I also had a lot of honey and a good amount of fruit that was in season, that was the diet that feels the best for me, is meat, fruit, and honey. So that gave me the full nourishment I felt like I was looking for. I have had some root vegetables, like since the winter, since I was going through some digestive issues, I did reintroduce like carrots and different, seasonal vegetables that are like squashes, like stuff that are a little bit more easygoing. Some people categorize squashes as actually fruits because the seeds are inside of them, like cucumbers, olives. But since I gave myself a little bit more variety, it's been great. But I've really felt like I'm finding the body that was like the most meant for me. And it's a lot of acceptance. Like I just don't think I was created to be super shredded. And when I was carnivore, I was still looking for that. And so we really have to be honest with ourselves. Like, are we trying to chase something that we aren't actually? So I think whatever diet you go into, it's just going to give you the truth that you need. Like maybe I would have come to that even without the carnivore diet, but I had to dive into that to really understand like, okay, the carnivore diet helped me in many ways, including healing my body. I made a video about this, but like my boobs did grow a lot more and I felt more developed and just lush. And I actually, now looking back, I feel like I didn't even gain that much weight. I feel like I just filled out in the parts that I needed to. But in other ways, I feel like I'm able to like maintain a lot more. When I was vegan, my body was like consistently fluctuating, but I feel like because I'm fueling myself with so much meat, I have a really good foundation of nutrients coming in. So my body is not in like survival mode. It's not feeling threatened. So I just feel like I have a really good equilibrium. And so my metabolism's able to be healed too. And so my metabolism still had to heal even after going carnivore. Like it's been a consistent journey. And I feel like now, summer 2023, I'm really feeling like my metabolism's feeling like the best it's ever had. And just feel like now in retrospect, looking back, I really want to consistently heal my hormones and create like higher fertility for myself. And so because of all of that, I'm really paying attention to all these things. Okay, so I'm kind of going between like why I'm not carnivore anymore, but also the benefits of why doing that carnivore diet was so great. I always come back to this phrase like discipline equals freedom. And so for me to feel fully free with food and feel like I could really trust my body's instincts, my body's needs, my body's cravings, I had to do the carnivore diet to again give me that baseline so I could feel what it feels like to just survive off of meat. And then now everything I add in, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm basically like microdosing everything else and it feels great. So my day-to-day now, I include more variety of foods, but meat, especially like ground beef, is still my foundation. I feel like it just digests the best for me and it just gives me all of the nutrients I need. And then I still just add in different things. So the other like really big benefits I would say around carnivore is like, if you've heard of all the benefits around keto, I really do think that like, although carbs can be a great source for fuel, I do think fats are a great source for fuel. So even now, I feel like I still keep my fats higher than my carbs. I don't take out carbs completely, but like I definitely have days where I do higher carbs, but that's really tuning into my menstrual cycle as well. And that's something I think for women that's like underrated. Like you really need to eat around your cycle, not just around like what the diet best is that's like out there. And so having more fats and really leaning into those like ketosis benefits. And finally, like nutrition, we just come back to satiety and creating a safe environment for your body to feel peace and rested. But when you're getting all the nutrients you need, which good quality, high quality meat has, then you're giving your body everything it needs in an abundance. I don't count calories anymore. I don't weigh myself anymore. I don't do anything with numbers. But when I was doing the carnivore diet, I did really lean into like just eating a ton of meat. And so my body still remembers that. So I have that foundation of like how much meat I want to eat for a day. And then I just add in all the extras. Okay. I know that was a lot, but I hope that gives you an idea of like why the carnivore diet might be good for you or might be good for like a 1 month or 3 months, but also why it might not be the best long term. And if you're trying to reach goals, carnivore diet's definitely not the only way. Sometimes we just are trying to look for quick fixes. I really think that's what it's about. And sometimes we just need to lean into the fact that healing your metabolism and healing your relationship with yourself and creating trust with food, it's all a long-term game. I don't ever want to shame anyone or myself for doing restrictive, strict diets because I really think I was able to discover so much about myself through them. Of course, if it's going to like cause detriment to your health and if you really feel unhealthy, sometimes it's hard to tell and sometimes it's hard to be honest with yourself, but intuitively, if you're feeling that, then it's, time to move on from that. And that's what I felt with my vegan diet. I was always open to experimentation and I was like, feeling good with meat. I'm not going to deny this. But then when I was carnivore, I'm like, I'm feeling good with some carbs here and there. So I'm not going to deny that either. So it's just like this consistent truth unfolding. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Happy that you guys tuned in. And until next time, thank you.